This presentation is on Christ and the lunar calendar. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years." Genesis 1:14. The Hebrew calendar is a lunar-based calendar, and this is by decree of God and according to the law of Moses. "Behold, all things have their likeness, and all things are created and made to bear record of me, both things which are temporal and things which are spiritual, things which are in the heavens above and things which are on the earth." Book of Moses 6:63. The new moon is a celestial sign that marked the beginning of a new month, and it was a time when the Israelites were to bring an offering to God. An offering was a gift brought before God, similar to the manner of approaching a king with humility and due honor. It did not necessarily consist of animal sacrifices, but could be anything from bread to jewels. The new star that appeared at the birth of Christ was a celestial sign, like the new moon. When they saw this sign in the heavens, the wise men came and offered a gift to the Savior of the world. The beginning of the month was known not by astronomical calculations, but by the testimony of messengers appointed to watch for the first visible appearance of the new moon. As soon as the first sliver was seen, the fact was announced throughout the whole country by signal fires on the mountaintops and the blowing of trumpets. The Hebrew word for month, or Hodesh, literally means new moon. The Hebrew word for new moon is Rosh Hadesh, meaning head of the month. It is a Jewish festival on which fasting and mourning are not allowed. So it is a time of spiritual renewal, a day when the prophets heard from Yahweh, being a day designated for waiting upon God, for discerning his purposes, and for prophetic revelation. The number 12 in the scriptures represents authority and governmental rule. The 12 sons of Jacob, or the 12 tribes, and the 12 apostles are symbols of authority, both in ancient Israel and in the Christian church. The book of Revelation uses the symbolism of 12, mentioning it 22 times in relation to the New Jerusalem that will descend to earth. In Revelation 7, the 144,000 are sealed, with 12,000 chosen from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. The city, New Jerusalem, has 12 gates, each manned by 12 angels, and the new city will be 12,000 furlongs squared. Jesus called and established 12 apostles, disciples in his church. Jesus among them, as their head, makes 13. When Joseph became 2 tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, that made 13 tribes. There are 13 people depicted at the Last Supper. By the way, this is how the number 13 became known as an unlucky number, because someone was about to die. The Hebrew lunar calendar has 13 months in a year, not 12 like we have as a solar calendar, but 13 months, for there are 13 cycles of the moon in a year. The moon is only visible to us when it reflects the light of the sun. The sun, like the Father, is too bright for us to look at directly. If we look directly at the sun, ultraviolet light floods our retina and literally burns out the exposed tissue. Neither can we look upon the full glory of God and live. The moon is only visible to us when it reflects the light of the sun. The moon, therefore, like Jesus, reflects the light of the Father, or the fullness of the glory of God, so that we can look upon him and see who God is in the form of a man. In this way, he is relatable, touchable, accessible. Since the scriptures say the law, the tabernacle, the feasts, and all of the observances of Israel are types and shadows, or symbolic of Christ, I believe the moon and the Hebrew lunar calendar is symbolic of Christ as well, and it will represent certain aspects of his birth, his ministry, his death, and resurrection. So, just as an example, let's look at the lunar calendar for the month of May 2022. If the moon or the lunar calendar is symbolic of Christ, then the new moon must represent the birth of Christ. There are 3 days when the moon appears to be full to the naked eye, the third day being where it begins to wane. Jesus' ministry lasted 3 years. He was crucified toward the end of his 3rd year ministry, even as the full moon begins to diminish. There are 3 days when the moon is dark and does not show itself to the naked eye. Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights. On the 3rd day, just 1% of the moon is visible. The next day, 3% is visible, which would be more visible to the naked eye. Jesus rose at the end of the 3rd day, but Mary would not witness that he was risen until the next morning, on the 4th day. Thus the cycle repeats every month, 13 times a year. The new moon, which is a holy celebration announced by the observation of a celestial sign, not only symbolizes the birth of Christ, but also his resurrection.